I mean that kind of cynical, arrogant, rational, hyper-intelligent nihilism that throws the world away as if it's of little use before it's been properly engaged with. That's Nietzsche's realization. He said, look, imagine that you live within a belief system, and then something arises to challenge the belief system. Not only does the belief system collapse, but something worse happens. Your belief in belief systems collapses.
Now this nihilism runs deep.
Danger, danger, danger.
And it conveys and betrays a certain contempt.
I became really interested in the reality of evil, and I was very interested in the viability of nihilistic beliefs. You know, why bother if everything's going to disappear in 100 years? Who cares? Life, you know, it's meaningless. In the final analysis, life is meaningless.
Right.
It's a upsetting case, because once you accept that, first of all, you're anxious and hurt by it. So that's not so good. And second, it kind of makes you aimless. And that's part of nihilism. It's like, you know, you're anxious and upset, but you're also aimless. Because why bother? When that gets out of hand, maybe you're nihilistic because you're mortal and life ends in death. So you're sort of nihilistic because of suffering. And so then you become nihilistic as a logical response to that. And then what happens? Nihilistic people definitely make suffering worse. If you are nihilistic, that's not neutral. It gets bad real fast. Your belief in belief systems collapses. Now, it doesn't have to, because you can jump from one belief system to another. But sometimes that doesn't work, is that you do a meta-critique and you say, oh, I was living in this protective structure and it turned out to be flawed. Okay, one alternative is jump to another protective structure. Fine. Another alternative is protective structures themselves are not to be trusted. Bang, you're in chaos. How the hell are you going to get out of that? That's the pathway to nihilism. The more I've thought about it, the less I've come to believe that there's any excuse for it whatsoever. And I think the reason for that is that it forestalls effort. It forestalls the ability to discover for yourself.
Jordan Peterson is working from a sort of stated but never fully disclosed assumption that a nihilist is someone who wastes his or her time playing video games because they care nothing for what accomplishments they could have in this world, accomplishments that would be unlikely to last more than 100 years. It's okay to employ stereotypes in your reasoning. Your reasoning about politics, your reasoning about history, your reasoning about personal problems in your own life. But you have to have a certain kind of detachment and self-discipline in how you talk about politics. Tell me something, Jordan Peterson. Are there no true believing Catholics who become video game addicts, who live lives in which they just dissipate out their energies, have no ambitions, and care nothing for what they could accomplish in this world, thinking that it won't make any difference 100 years from now? Are there no devout Muslims among the video game addicts? Is there any relationship whatsoever between nihilism, as he defines it, and this problem of people dissipating their potential, whether it's with video game addiction or any other meaningless, self-centered, self-indulgent distraction? Now, stereotypes, they come from somewhere, they mean something, they go somewhere, they serve a purpose. I have a background in the performing arts. I have a background in all kinds of crazy, crazy forms of artistic self-expression, including the publishing industry. Many people, many people in the arts have the following stereotype. They say, you know, you look around this place, and there are three types of people. There are heterosexual men, there are heterosexual women, and there are gay men. And it seems like the gay men get 10 times as much work done as everybody else. Why do you think that is? Right? This is a stereotype that exists based on people's experience in the performing arts. Many of the arts, where they look around and say, you know, these breeders, these heterosexual people, they got no ambition, they get nothing done. If you want something done, work with one of these guys over here. It's a real stereotype, right? And in many other walks of life, the opposite stereotype exists, that it's only heterosexual men, very masculine, dominant men with all their toxic masculinity, that those are the people who are highly ambitious and getting something done, whereas the more effeminate men, homosexual men, so on and so forth, the stereotype is that they are lazy, aimless, and self-indulgent. Okay, I've worked in different different worlds where each of those stereotypes prevails. Video game addiction is at an epidemic level in this world. It's so widespread. It's so common. You could have 100 homosexual friends, and every single one of your friends is a video game addict. In fact, it's possible you made all these friends because you joined a Facebook group for homosexual video game enthusiasts. It's possible that's where you met these people. But regardless, it's possible in your own life, in your own experience, all of the homosexuals you've ever known and met are lazy, self-indulgent video game addicts. But if you step to me and you tell me you have this stereotype, you have this bias, that your perspective of the world is that you really don't like gay people, you're prejudiced against gay people, you don't get along with gay people, and the reason is that you feel these guys are all lazy video game addicts. Even if you can get out your Rolodex, let's be real, you can get out your Instagram and you can scroll through your 100 friends. Say, look, okay, Tom, Steve, Harry, you know 100 examples of this, and you know 0 examples of the contrary. That's your anecdotal experience. There is still no relationship whatsoever between being a homosexual and being a video game addict. And it's preposterous. You don't even need to go out and do social science research. Just think it through. So is video game addiction not a problem for heterosexual men? Is it not a problem for the most masculine, most toxic masculine of heterosexual men? Is it only a problem for feminine men? Is it only a problem for gay men? Why would these two variables be related in any way? Now, if there's one problem on earth more common than video game addiction, it's laziness. Okay? Jordan Peterson presents us with a critique of nihilism, which is in fact a critique of laziness, and the particular type of laziness he's describing. True believing Catholics demonstrate it. Orthodox Muslims demonstrate it. The most devout Buddhists demonstrate it. There is no meaningful relationship between the type of laziness he's talking about and nihilism in theory or in practice. But I would like to thank Jordan Peterson for one thing, which is that he is advancing the correct definition of nihilism. He's making people aware of it. And whether it's 1 in a million or 1 in 10 million, there will be a few people in the audience who hear this definition, who respond to it, and start reasoning their way out of religion, reasoning their way out of every ideology, reasoning their way past mere skepticism, past mere atheism, to a fundamental critique of belief itself. That they start to adopt a worldview that, as Peterson himself says correctly, does not just reject one religion, does not just reject one system of beliefs, but all systems of beliefs, all actually existing, all potential or hypothetical systems of belief. I wasn't raised Christian. I was raised communist. both of my parents were true-believing extremist communists. I have met face-to-face people who were born and raised communist, whether in China, Cambodia, Laos, in communist countries where it's more common. I've met people who were born and raised communist, and they told me directly in these words that when they lost faith in communism, they decided to convert to Christianity because they wanted to believe in something. And you can see some consistencies, what their interest was in communism and what their interest was in Christianity. In some cases, their interest was doing humanitarian work, trying to uplift the poor, wanting to be part of a religion that says, the first shall be last and the last shall be first, that has some kind of pro-poor, not even pro-working class, but a doctrine that's in favor of the upliftment of the poorest of the poor. What I did was not to reject communism in order to embrace Buddhism. What I did was not to reject one religion or one ideology to embrace another. It was to understand fundamentally what belief is, why we believe, and then to discipline myself or evolve to a point at which I don't need beliefs in my life at all, in which I just live with the cool, calm, detached awareness that there is nothing to be believed in. Does that make me more or less lazy? Does that make me more or less ambitious? Does that make me more or less inclined to do humanitarian work in Cambodia or Myanmar? Does that make me more or less inclined to be a revolutionary? Does that make me more or less inclined, let's be all the way real here, to be a homosexual? All of these religions, all faiths, all beliefs, even political ideologies like communism, what they require, first and foremost, is that you live in a kind of denial of who you really are. And the homosexuals among us, homosexuals living in the closet, for example, in Muslim societies, in their millions, they are the perfect canaries in the coal mine for what it is that's wrong with belief as such, and why it is inevitable that each of us as individuals, and all of us collectively on the scale of societies of millions, must have a confrontation with the darkness of the Dark Ages, with the religious preconceptions left over from centuries gone by. Why at some point we have to stop believing in ideals and start believing in ourselves, just so that we can live without feeling a constant sense of self-loathing, without suppressing who and what it is that we truly are. You may not be homosexual. You may have to use a little bit of that imagination of yours to think about what it's like to be gay in Saudi Arabia right now. But straight or gay, man or woman, what you really are and who you really are is not a perfect soul. It's not a believer. It's not something or someone that can ever live up to the measures established by those beliefs. But it's someone, it's something unique that can do something, that can create something different from anything that has ever been in this world before.